So, yes, I have, yeah. Please rise for the Chairman of Thanet District Council.
Good evening, members. Please sit. Right, where are we now? Let's see. Good evening, members and officers of the Council and members of the press and public. I welcome you to this reconvened meeting of the Council. And in 4 years, that's the first time I've done a reconvened meeting of the Council. Moving on immediately, fire evacuation procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the building via the emergency exits. Filming of the meeting, I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? And no one has indicated. Any filming or recording will not be permitted for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered following exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. There we are. I touched on those pretty quick. So moving immediately on to agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Dexter, Paul Moore, Rogers, Towning and Lees. Do I have any other apologies? Councillor Councillor Curry, sorry.
Yeah, apologies from Councillor Hopkinson, Councillor Huxley and Councillor Patmore.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies? Councillor Fellows.
Councillor Coleman-Cook has a late apology.
Thank you very much. Is that all apologies? It would seem so. Thank you very much indeed, members. Moving on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? And I don't see any shown. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of July 2022. I move the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 14th of July 2022 be approved and signed as a correct record. Will the Vice Chairman please second?
Second that, Chair.
Do members agree? Thank you. Agenda item 4, announcements. I have no announcements in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 22.4. One of these evenings, perhaps I will. Agenda item 5, petitions. No new petitions have been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 12. Agenda item 6, questions from the press and public. Now then, there have been 2 questions received from the press and public in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 13. Please note that only the questioner and respondent are permitted to speak on the question. Could the questioner please only state the name of the Cabinet member to whom the question is to be put and read out the exact wording of the question that they're submitting to the Council. So without moving agenda item 6A, question number 1 from a member of the public regarding sewage outflows. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Saunders to the meeting. Mr. Saunders, could you please make your way to the microphone? Mr. Saunders isn't here.
Answer it in writing.
Well, we do have a Councillor Saunders. We have 2 Councillor Saunders, in fact, but I don't think they'll do in this circumstance. Mr. Saunders will receive a written reply from the Council. Right. Agenda item 6B, question number 2 from a member of the public regarding the climate crisis. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Roberts to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the microphone, Mr. Roberts?
Right, thank you. Having joined you just arrived, I'm actually still digging out the exact wording of the question. So can I paraphrase slightly or take a best guess at the wording?
There is a really bad traffic jam at the hospital, John.
Thank you.
There you go, just at the top.
Thank you. So my question is, do the councillors believe that, in the context of their role, they are doing all they can to respond to the climate crisis? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Roberts. I call upon Councillor Bob Bayford to respond.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr Roberts, for your question. TDC called a climate emergency on the 11th of July 2019. An officer working group and a cross-party councillor working group were formed to initiate actions on the first environmental action plan. All of the actions within this plan have been completed, and that included adding increased energy efficiency measures in the local plan. All developments over 10 units must have an EV charging point, and air quality in Thanet has now improved to meet all UK standards. In December 2021, the working group was changed to a cross-party cabinet advisory group to produce a net zero strategy and action plan, focused specifically on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The new net zero strategy was published this month and is now in a period of public engagement. Behind this strategy is a full action plan involving all directors and managers of the council. I monitor this action plan every month, and the Climate Change Cabinet Advisory Group monitors it every 2 months. And Council will also get a chance to monitor progress each year. We've also set up an external auditing process. The net zero strategy not only covers our aim to reach net zero by 2030 in our estates and transport, but also addresses emissions and insulation in our social housing and Thanet-wide housing, helping to address the cost of living crisis and climate change at the same time. In the past year, the Council has also addressed the ecological emergency by planting wildflower meadows and trees. We planted 42 standard trees in Jackie Baker's and will plant 1,000 young trees in Ramsgate Parks this month with children from 4 junior schools. Residents will also be able to get involved with planting a further 58 trees in November at the War Recreation Ground at Nethercourt Park. I personally, I hope councillors agree, think that we're doing a brilliant job with the resources we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Thank you, Mr Roberts. I move on to agenda item 7, questions from members of the council. In total, 9 questions have been received from members of the council for this evening. Please note that the time allowed for consideration of questions from the members shall not exceed 30 minutes. However, given the circumstances, I will be flexible about this, as I usually am, but I do ask members to be as succinct as possible. Agenda item 7I, question number 1 from a member regarding maintenance of memorial monuments. I call upon Councillor Crittenden. Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Councillor Pugh. Why has this council ceased to provide adequate maintenance and care of the memorials and monuments for which it is responsible, including Grade 2 listed structures, in accordance with the decision of Cabinet in October 2005, and what is proposed to rectify this situation?
Thank you, Councillor Crittenden. Councillor Pugh, are you able to respond?
I am, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Crittenden, for your question. The Council has limited resources to undertake maintenance work on its portfolio of property assets, and as a consequence, maintenance programmes have been reduced and priority given to the most significant buildings and assets and to health and safety related works. We are reviewing the Council's assets, including listed structures, so that we can move to a more sustainable position across the whole portfolio, which potentially includes generating additional income, disposing of buildings and assets that are no longer required, or working with town and parish councils or other partners to explore the transfer of assets where this is appropriate. The Property Director, I've been informed, met with Councillor Crittenden on the 31st of August to discuss the Destiny statue, cleaning works and the wider possible transfer to town councils of statues and ancient monuments and their subsequent maintenance and repair. In some circumstances, the transfer of structures such as listed monuments to parish or town councils may mean that necessary maintenance could be completed more quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Councillor Crittenden, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I actually slipped it in with the main question. Thank you.
Ah, right. Well, that shortens things. Agenda item 7B, question number 2 from a member regarding graffiti in Ramsgate and Margate car parks. This one's from you, Councillor Alban.
You're right, Chair. Thank you. This is for a question for Councillor Pugh again. The state of the multi-storey car parks in Ramsgate and Margate are disgusting. Can you please confirm that action will be taken to thoroughly clean and remove graffiti as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Pugh, you're in the wars this evening. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I am, but I don't mind. It's fine. Thank you, Councillor Alban, for your question. The car parks have been subjected to significant graffiti attacks over the summer months, and these have been reported to our minor works team for removal and/or painting over. Officers from our CCTV team have also undertaken removal of the offensive graffiti within Mill Lane as it has occurred. All of these incidents have been reported to Kent Police for investigation, including CCTV images of the offenders. During the summer season, resources have been redirected to high priority areas. Our cleansing team will now return to normal service and will visit the car parks 3 times a week to complete general litter picking, and deep cleans are scheduled in twice a year. The next one is due to be completed this month, and this is coordinated with waste and recycling to ensure that the sites are swept before deep cleaning. And I would also add, Councillor Alban, that whilst I agree that the car parks can get in a particularly nasty state, I think it's important that we recognise that the council is doing the best they can to maintain them and keep them clean, but really the responsibility also rests with the people that want to trash them in the first place and have no respect for any public buildings. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. It is a problem. Councillor Alban, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Chair. I thank Councillor Pugh for his answers, and I support his views certainly about the people responsible for the graffiti. So I've basically got a 2-part question, Chair, in relation to the Royal Harbour multi-storey car park, and that is the council going to continue with the lease of the car park? And secondly, can it be advised as to when the lifts will be operational? Thank you very much, Councillor Saunders, as they've been out of action for a good 1.5 years or so. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Alban, I don't feel it's directly related to the first question, and therefore I'm really leaving it to Councillor Pugh as to whether or not he wishes to respond on that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Alban. All I was going to say was that let's take this away. I'll seek an update from officers and let's see what we can find out, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Alban.
I don't think you were right, Chair. In my opinion, it was in relation to both the car parks, and I've got a supplementary question about a car park. So how can that be out of order? Thank you, Chair.
I didn't say it was out of order, Councillor Alban. I said it was, in my opinion, unrelated, and as Chair, my opinion is what matters here. I respect what you have to say, but notwithstanding, I stand by what I've said. So thank you, Councillor Alban.
Seeing as you're the Governor, Chair, and I will take that on board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Alban. Agenda item 7C, a question number 3 from a member regarding local housing allowance levels. I call upon Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. In light of our current housing crisis, what interventions are planned for central recognition of the fact that our LHA rates are currently utterly insufficient for the property demands of our area? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Whitehead. I call upon Councillor Jill Bayford to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for the question. The Council works closely with local landlords and letting agents with the aim of ensuring that the private rented sector continues to make a valuable contribution to meeting the housing needs of the district and to support households that need assistance with the housing circumstances to access suitable and affordable private sector tenancies. Increases in private rented sector rents have made this work much more challenging. It's increasingly difficult for households on low incomes to find suitable and affordable homes in the private rented sector. This is due to both rent increases and to pressures on the supply of homes in the private rented sector. As Cabinet Member for Housing, I have specifically written to the Minister for Housing at the Department of Levelling Up and Local Government to raise concerns about our local housing pressures. In my letter, I specifically stated that The current upward pressure on private sector rents now means that over 80% of the properties available in the private rented sector have rents above the local housing allowance rate. And in particular, the 30% percentile rent, which has previously been the basis for local housing allowance, is £31.41 per week above the local housing allowance rate for the area. This position is clearly not sustainable for many households. A large part of the response to this is the Council's ongoing commitment to the direct provision of new affordable homes. Since April 2021, this work, including the Council's own development programme, has seen the number of new affordable homes delivered increase to 126 in 21-22, with a further increase to 314 homes projected to be completed during 22-23. These programmes will not be sufficient on their own, and we do therefore need to continue to seek increases in the local housing allowance rates for Thanet. To that end, specific reference to this issue was included in the report on housing delivery that was considered at Cabinet on the 22nd of September. The recommendation to further raise this issue with central government was agreed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Whitehead, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Chair. Thank you. Firstly, thank you to Councillor Bayford for the response. I do recognise the importance of the delivery of both council and genuinely affordable housing, but it is still a very long-term approach, and we are in crisis now. Currently, the LHA rate for a three-bedroom house is £797.81 a month. A search yesterday brings up only 5 properties within Margate that are under £1,200 a month, which means that the requests to central government are particularly urgent. I know that we have both written regarding the LHA rates. I know that we've both written over an extended period now. So my secondary question is simply, have they responded? Because the situation we are in now is unsustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, with a matter that all of us recognise. Councillor Bayford, have you able to respond to that supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Yeah, I mean, you'll be aware that I did receive a response to my first letter. I believe you haven't yet received one, is that so?
I haven't received a response to my letter. I know of the response to your letter previously. I was referring principally to the last referral of Cabinet in terms of addressing the relevant minister, because the LHA rate was also included in the requests to central government.
Yes, it has been done, but this has not yet been delivered.
Thank you.
No report. Thank you.
That seems to have cleared that up. Agenda item 7D, question number 4 from a member regarding EV charging points. I call upon Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Bayford, Bob Bayford, regarding the absence of public electrical vehicle charging points in Broadstairs specifically. There are 2 public charging points in Ramsgate, 2 in Margate, plus rapid chargers in Margate and Birchington, but to date nothing in Broadstairs. I have been asked by residents about the lack of provision in Broadstairs, and when the Council's net zero strategy and action plan is being launched, surely this should be a priority now. Buying an electric car is a big commitment, and one of the considerations in making that decision is the availability of charging points. Not only residents, but also many of our visitors to Broadstairs also rely on the availability of these charging points. So could you please tell me where we stand currently and when we can expect to see public electric vehicle charging points in Broadstairs, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bob Bayford.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And thank you for your question, Councillor Bailey. EV charging points have historically been installed across the district as and when government funding has been available. Our current chargers in the multi-storey car parks are out of contract, and we are working with Kent County Council on a new scheme across the district. We are at the point of signing contracts, and therefore installation should begin within the next few months. As part of this new contract, we will be installing charging points in Albion Street car park in Broadstairs. There's an expectation across the sector that as electric cars become more popular, that the number of charging points will increase across the country. Thanet as a whole has a large quantity of EV points in various settings such as supermarkets and petrol stations. As a local authority, we will continue to look to increase those available in our car parks. Since 2018, we've also been requesting EV points as part of new developments. There is currently government funding available for parish and town councils to install EV charging points in their own car parks or publicly available spaces, and we've notified town and parish councils of that and hope they will act on it. The Council's Net Zero strategy was approved for public engagement on the 22nd of September. There will be a period of public engagement for local people to comment on the proposed strategy and actions. Two of the actions within priority 8 of the strategy are to 1, complete installations of the currently funded electric charging points across the district, and 2, to create a future plan for EV charging points on TDC-owned land as part of the parking strategy review. We will also look for opportunities to install EV charging points as part of our housing new build programme and suitable refurbishment projects for our housing stock where this is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford, and very thorough. I come back to you, Councillor Bailey, for a supplementary.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you very much. That's good news about Albion Street car park, if and when that occurs. I was just quite disappointed to read, there was a recent report from the DFT which said Thanet had the least number of public vehicle charging points by some way. So I'm hoping that we can catch up with the rest of East Kent. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bailey. I didn't actually get a supplementary question from you. So I won't call back on Councillor Bayford unless he would like to respond to not a question. No, I don't think he does. Agenda item 7E, question number 5 from member regarding electric vehicle charging points. Again, I call upon Councillor Wing.
I'm going to read my question, but I think Councillor Bayford has actually answered the question, so it might be I read my question and then go straight to my response, if that's okay. My question: the recent Hay Car report concerning electric vehicle sales indicates a rapid growth in both battery electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles, which in 2021 represented 18.5% of all new vehicle sales. This upward trend and clear growing demand continued into 2022, with March seeing the highest volume of registrations ever recorded in a single month. The electric vehicle market is simply booming and will continue to accelerate, outstripping diesel vehicle sales by the end of 2022. Department of Transport data published in January 2022 puts Thanet in the bottom 20 to 40% of local authorities in terms of electric vehicle charging provision. How many electric charging points have Thanet District Council provided for public use? Where are they, and do we have any plans to increase provision given the rapidly growing demand? I actually think that Councillor Bayford answered that question, so can I go to my response?
Councillor Wing, he has intimated he would like to come back at you on it, which is generous and should be looked forward to.
Thank you.
Councillor Wing, thank you for your question. I've got good news, bad news and better news. The good news is that we have installed some electric vehicle charging points. The news is that there's only 4. The bad news is they're not currently working. But the better news is that they will be fixed under the new contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Short and sharp. Now we can move on to your supplementary, Councillor Wing.
My supplementary, EV charging points will be an important part. Notice I got EV in, so it's definitely relevant. Important part of the parking review. When will this start, and will it engage with residents, ward councillors and other stakeholders badly affected by present parking issues?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wing. Back to you, Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, Councillor Wing, parking isn't my portfolio, so I can't tell you when it's going to start. I'm sure one of the Cabinet members could, but I think shortly. I'm sure that we will take into account what the public's views are and what councillors' views are. I mean, we've always, when we've done things like parking reviews, certainly involved cross-party members in the committee. What I will say, though, is that quite coincidentally, In recent review of the action plan that we're doing, it was agreed with Chris Blundell and the Climate Change Officer and myself that we would actually seek to move EV charging points in their provision further up the agenda and start to put pressure on. KCC play a major part in the provision of this. We've got a regular dialogue set up with their cabinet member and their lead officer. We should be having another meeting with them in November, and certainly EV points will be a major part of that discussion. I know that KCC have got some ideas, and hopefully they will be to the benefit of Thanet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. I'm just wondering, how many people in this room have electric vehicles?
I've got an electric bike.
There are two. There are two. Just out of interest, that's all. Right. Agenda item 7S is a question number 6 from a member regarding parks and open spaces. I have had apologies from Councillor Huxley, and so she will receive a written answer from Council. Agenda item 7, G then, question number 7 from a member regarding environmental protection and housing development. I call upon Councillor Smith.
Jolly good, thank you. Thank you, Chair. To quote the RSPB, that radical organisation in England, this government has launched an attack on nature. The UK government's recent mini-budget included plans for investment zones where planning permission would be easier to get. Plans have also been announced for a sunset clause on environmental protections introduced when the UK was in the EU. Alongside suggestions that the planned environmental land management scheme, which would have paid farmers to improve nature on the land, is to be scrapped, and rumours that payment by acre will no longer be linked to any environmental measures. The experience with the Shottendane Road development this year demonstrated that our powers to protect the district's landscape, environment and quality of life are already weak. What assurances can you give us that the Council remains committed to sustainable environmental policy in Thanet in the face of central government's agenda to promote economic growth at all costs by enabling unlimited housing development? I'm sorry, I was addressing Councillor Bayford.
Thank you very much. This is, I believe, to the leader, Councillor Ashby, to respond.
Very well.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. I'm sure Councillor Bayford could answer it just as adequately as I will. We remain committed. We remain committed to a sustainable environmental policy in Thanet, in line with legislation, government guidance, and our own local plan. The scope of our current work to review the local plan includes environmental issues and climate change, and the adoption of any revised policies will be a matter for full council to consider in due course. Investment zones do not promote economic growth at all costs. They are specifically targeted at identified geographic locations proposed by local councils that aim to enhance the opportunities for economic growth at those specific locations. Although there is currently limited detail about the way in which investment zones will work, it is clear they will aim to reduce the tax burdens in investment zones to help promote economic growth and establish a bespoke approach to planning, accelerating delivery of needed infrastructure, homes and jobs. These innovations will only apply within the specific boundaries of identified investment zones. Our zone proposal focus on economic growth with the aim of creating jobs that our local community need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, it might be a little repetitive, but what I want to know is to what extent can we resist the rolling back of environmental legislation or the weakening of environmental legislation in order to protect our environment as well as our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, but I do really think that's one for central government. Nevertheless, if the leader would like to respond,
Yes, I would just like to confirm that there's a lot of misconception around these investment zones. Unfortunately, because the government haven't actually stipulated specific details regarding the whole matter, it has been somewhat hijacked by certain groups to actually use this as a stick in which to beat everyone with. The investment zones are not a tool to enable the absolutely abolition of either building regulations or even environmental regulations. We as a council can only follow the guidelines and the specific laws of the land. So therefore I'm unable to actually confirm whether or not there's anything other than we can do other than remain within the law within this council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. Councillor Bayford, I've got another one coming your way. Question number 8 from a member regarding trees. I call upon Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. A classic stereotypical Green Party question for me for a change. Councillor Bayford, we all know trees are important for carbon capture, cooling and heat waves, biodiversity and our well-being. Thanet has the lowest tree cover in Kent, yet mature trees are regularly felled both for development and other reasons, and replacing them is a challenge. Please could you tell us how members and residents can find out when local trees, particularly those with protection orders, are under threat of felling? How long it typically takes to place a protection order on a tree and what protection that confers in practice? Whether we're considering making more TDC land available to community groups wanting to plant and maintain trees, and how and when we plan to replace our horticulture and biodiversity officer. A consultant undertaking desk-based assessments from Devon seems inadequate for the task at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I thought our constitution said one question and a supplementary. I counted at least 3 in there, but never mind. So, okay. All applications for works to protected trees or notices for work to trees in conservation areas are published on the Council's website with a site notice posted at the site where the work is proposed. The Council is not required to be informed of work to unprotected trees in the district. The time taken to serve a TPO depends on multiple factors, including carrying out an assessment of the tree or group of trees and legal checks on ownership and serving of the order. The Council has recently employed a planning assistant for trees who is processing applications and notifications whilst also progressing through the requests for new TPOs received. A TPO restricts the ability of an owner to carry out works to a tree with limited exceptions without first submitting an application to the Council. New TPOs are provisionally placed for 6 months, with the Council required to confirm a TPO within that time to make an order permanent. TDC will have a clearer picture of where trees can be planted on TDC land by next spring, in readiness for the autumn 23, spring 24 planting season. We aim to create a map of where community groups can plant trees so that groups can plan their projects. TDC has drafted a community tree planting protocol which we ask community groups to follow. An online application form has also been created. We ask community groups to consider all aspects of tree planting and ask for proof that they have consulted with local community groups, town councils or have a clear plan to do so, confirmation that they will purchase the trees from companies which have a biosecure stock, confirmation that they have full resources to establish the trees for 3 years after planting. It's important that they undertake watering over the first 3-year period. A new officer role within the Council's Open Spaces team is anticipated to be created and filled next year, replacing the previous Horticultural and Biodiversity Officer. Their role will span tree advice for planning and tree surveys and health and safety in the Council's open spaces. In the meantime, the Planning Department is using a consultant to provide detailed analysis of tree applications and planning applications which affect trees, when required in support of the new planning assistant for trees. This has included and continued to include site visits to assess tree works when required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford, and I think you answered those 3 questions very well. Councillor Alston, do you have a supplementary question?
I'm not sure I dare with Councillor Baver's reaction there. Thank you very much. That was, I'm particularly encouraged about the plans for land and community planting there, and we'll pass that on to community groups. I think a number of us are concerned about knowing more about when trees with protection orders in our own wards are threatened with felling. Is there any way that we can amplify the information that goes out to members and to the community about that? I know there are site notices, but often they're not very visible. Are there ways we could improve that at all, Councillor Bayford?
Thank you, Councillor Austin. A sort of supplementary question there for you, Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that that's not something I've specifically thought about. It's something we can look at, but I mean, as we've already said, I mean, it's published on the council's website. Notices are put up, so I would have thought, you know, with ward councillors' keen observation skills, they would notice these things, or their networks would inform them of these. So, you know, I mean, I don't know really what else we can do, but I'll ask a question.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Question number 9 from a member regarding the cost of living crisis. I call upon Councillor Farrance.
Thank you, Chair. According to the index of multiple deprivation, I'll start again.
Councillor Farrance, it's normal to stand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I noticed that Councillor Whitehead didn't stand, and it's easier for me to...
Yes.
Otherwise, I'd have to hold this at a funny angle.
All right, we'll let that go. I'll let that go this evening.
You'll let it go? Right. So my question is, according to the index of multiple deprivation for England, Thanet continues to rank as the most deprived local authority in Kent. In particular, Margate Central ranks 67th out of 32,844 local areas. That's 67th out of 32,844 areas. It's closely followed by Cliftonville West at 117th and Newington at 284th. Clearly, these figures illustrate that we have extremely high levels of children in poverty, homelessness, unemployment and benefits claimants, and rough sleepers. This cost of living crisis, sometimes known as the cost of capitalism crisis, will hit thousands of our residents and their well-being and put them in a very dangerous position. Many people are very fearful about how they'll be able to find the money to stay warm this winter and find enough to eat. Therefore, could the council please outline its plans to support the thousands of residents suffering deprivation, particularly our children and elderly and disabled, through the coming winter months? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrance. Before I move on, I just simply mention that the matter of rising is just a courtesy to council, which, normally speaking, we do encourage. Nevertheless, I call upon the leader to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's impossible for me to list the good work that this council does for the residents of Thanet, but for your specific question, the council has already administered over £8.7 million worth of support to almost 58,000 households in the district in the form of council tax energy rebate payments, with payments of £150 being made to all households in properties band D and below. Over and above this, we've also provided target support through our very own discretionary energy rebate scheme. This discretionary scheme has allocated £371,000 and benefited almost 10,000 households in the district. Staying on the theme of council tax support, it is important to recognise that we continue to have one of the most generous local council tax support schemes in the country. Our scheme provides up to 90% relief for working age residents, helping those on low income pay their council tax. The council will also continue to provide support in the form of discretionary housing payments, making extra payments to residents receiving housing benefit or the housing cost element of universal credit, who need the most help with their housing costs. The Council has provided over £460,000 through our Household Support Fund, with this scheme being used to provide support to just under 5,000 households. This includes direct financial support to pensioners with energy bills, also approximately 1,500 well and warm packs, which include money and energy-saving essentials such as microwave ovens. The third tranche of the Household Support Fund is due to be rolled out over the autumn and winter period. Our Housing Options team will continue to financially assist households who are threatened with homelessness in various ways, including assisting them to pay off rent arrears to sustain their tenancy, support with going through budget plans and personal housing plans, helping with the rent in advance and deposit towards new accommodation. Our RISE team, which recently secured funds until March 2025, also provide food vouchers, phones, move-in packs, initial gas and electric top-ups, donated items, furniture, as well as giving help with food parcels, signposting to food banks, all designed to help someone from rough sleeping into a sustainable home. Our tenant and leaseholder services include a financial wellbeing team who can support our tenants with managing their finances and accessing all of the benefits they are entitled to. In the private sector, we are providing support for people experiencing fuel poverty to access funding for energy efficient improvements and taking action against landlords who fail to provide adequate heating and insulation. At this point, I would like to add that I think the council officers do an absolute fantastic job in this council for the residents of Thanet, and they are working extremely hard to provide the support that is needed. And they also have to administer, when the government decides to add additional grants onto the existing framework, they also have to administrate that, which they have to do on top of their already huge workloads. And also, I'd like to actually say at this point as well that our RISE team do a superb job in this district, and they go out in all weathers, all times of the night and day. So, you know, I think they're doing everything they can, the council's doing everything they can, and I'm very, well, for one, very proud of our officers and the RISE team. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, Leader. Thank you very much. I come back to Councillor Farrens. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Farrens?
Yes, and I want to say that I'm glad that Councillor Ashby has taken the opportunity to show how well we're doing, and that my question has enabled her to do that. That is very impressive. What I am concerned about is us supporting food banks and the possibility of that, and also about keeping people warm. Now, we have very empty council offices here. There are public buildings, there's the library, and I wondered if there's any plans to support our food banks more, and also to offer warm spaces to people for certain times during this hard winter that we're going to expect with the fuel prices. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrens. Back to you, Leader.
I know this council and the community team are very supportive of the food banks. I believe that we actually provide free accommodation for one of the food banks from our own estate's property. I believe that tenancy is coming up shortly is coming up for ending, but this council does support where it can. I will find out whether or not there are any plans for the council building itself to be a warm hub. I actually thought about it the other day to think that whether or not that would be something that we could facilitate, and I will take it up with the community team.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. That concludes our questions for this evening. Before I move on, I just simply mention that, and not mentioning anybody in particular, but it is normal procedure to stand when asking and replying to a question. It's a courtesy to the council and to all councillors who would be responding.
Yeah,
so
I would like
anyway,
to say I don't like to be seen as discourteous, because I think I am quite a courteeous person.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that.
I apologise for many misunderstandings. But
well,
I
you can make
I have told my leader and Mr. Hughes in the past about my difficulties, so I'm sorry if I didn't make it public enough.
Well, my apologies if you have a particular difficulty, Councillor Farrens, and in the circumstances, I think that's understood by everybody. Councillor Everett.
I just wanted to clarify that we have had this conversation about Councillor Whitehead on a number of occasions, and that's been, as she's personally been referred to, you've understood the fact that she has difficulty standing up. I don't think it's an appropriate thing for us to keep going on about. Thank you.
Councillor Everett, well taken, and in Councillor Whitehead's case, I do understand, and anybody who has a disability problem or anything like that, likewise, that would be understood. Agenda item 8, notice of motion. Now, one notice of motion has been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3. Please note that the time allowed for consideration of motion shall not exceed 30 minutes, and I ask members to be as succinct as possible. So, we have under this agenda item 8 a motion regarding water supply and treatment. I call upon Councillor Smith, who is bringing this motion.
Thank you. It's me again. Thank you, Chair. At the risk of stating the obvious, and I don't need to read the whole motion, do I? Because that will take a long time. Good. At the risk of stating the obvious, water is an essential substance without which we don't survive. In my motion, I quoted Ian Macaulay, the former CEO of Southern Water, who describes Thanet as water stressed, and I believe that what he meant was there may not be enough clean fresh water to keep us safe and, well, alive. 93% of the drinking water in Thanet relies on one aquifer. And plus, Thanet's local economy depends on a safe and inviting sea for ourselves and for visitors. Southern Water is currently required only to comment on the availability of the pipes, not on the capacity to treat wastewater. We're not proposing policy. We're not proposing that we impose policy on the officers who deliver it, but we are proposing that we at least request the information that is necessary for the planning committee to make informed decisions about housing development specifically. Similar motions to this one have been recently passed in Lewis, in Wealdon, in Mendip and Cambridge City, I believe. Sorry? Okay. In many cases, this received wide cross-party support, in some cases unanimous cross-party support. It always received a lot of press coverage and massive public support. And I believe that it is in our interests to be seen to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, would you actually like to read out the detail of your proposed motion? Oh, you're leaving. You are leaving that bit. Understood.
I wasn't going to, because I was informed that I didn't need to, so I ad-lib, well, more or less ad-lib. If
well,
you
want
to hear the...
You don't need to, but you had 20 seconds left. Nevertheless, is there a seconder for that motion? Who do I have? Councillor Austin, are you seconding? Thank you. Would members please note that in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3.7, if the motion is seconded, then they will be referred to Cabinet as it relates to a Cabinet function, unless Council decides to debate the motion. Now, if Council wishes to debate the motion, then following debate, the motion will be referred to Cabinet in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3.84. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 3.7, a member of the controlling political group is entitled to reply. Therefore, Leader, Councillor Ashby, would you like to make a reply?
Thank you, Chair. Not really sure what I'm replying to, but all I can do is actually inform Council about the work that I've already done with Southern Water. As you're all aware, I introduced Ian Macaulay to this Council. He did a members' briefing. There have been various meetings. There are all sorts of There's activity going on, Pathfinders project, which I am actually on the task team for that, so I represent Thanet at that. We have the Thanet Water Users Group, which regularly meets to discuss various issues. I mean, I can come out with there's all sorts of facts and figures where we are involved, and we do hold Southern Water to account. I think that was demonstrated by the £100,000 that was actually obtained from Southern Water in compensation to the council for the distress that it caused the council and the actual tourism industry at the time. We have Blue Flag Awards, we have Seaside Awards, and I appreciate a contentious subject, but all I can do is assure council that they are being held to account on a regular basis. In fact, Toby Willison met with the fishermen, which I arranged last month, so we are very active with them. There are various SUDS programmes, but the underlying fact for Thanet is that our issue here is very simple. We do not have a rainwater separation system in this district. Our problem is not with the new builds in this district, our problem is with our existing stock, and that is the hard fact. If we built tanks that constitute 12 swimming pool sizes in Thanet, then that would be where we would actually eliminate the problems with the treatment works, and that is the hard fact. And unfortunately, this council 15 years ago turned down the planning permission to do such that. So we are sort of engineers of our own fate. But one thing I would add, and the point that you make about acknowledge that this council cannot acknowledge that the water quality has deteriorated. We cannot do that. But I will say from a personal residence, I water skied at Fourness Point 35 years ago, and I often visit now, still go down there and go and have water skied up to very recently, and I can assure you the water quality is 100 times better than it was 35 years ago. And that's not defending Southern Water, that is just stating a fact.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. Do I have a councillor who wishes to debate the meeting, propose debating? Councillor, I can't see who is that. Councillor Austin, sorry, Councillor Austin, I couldn't quite see you. Do you have a seconder for that, to debate the motion? And I do. I have Councillor Wing. Do councillors agree to debate the motion? No. I think I better have a show of hands. Those in favour to debate the motion? Those in favour of not debating the motion?
So that's not agreed to debate the motion.
I've just been informed that's not agreed to debate the motion, and in consequence it will just be referred to Cabinet as is usual. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to agenda item 9, the Leader's report. I call upon the Leader, Councillor Ashby.
Sorry, Chair, you're just scooting through this agenda.
It's catching up, are you?
Yeah. He's under strict orders. Anyone would think I had, and I'll read this as quickly as I can. Due to the sad passing of our wonderful Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, I was unable to deliver my original version, which I've now updated for this reconvened meeting. It will come as no surprise to you all that my opening item is to express my delight that the Secretary of State for Transport has granted the DCO for Manston Airport. One thing we did agree on at the last council meeting was for the government to make a decision either way. Councillor Alban, you did request that I write to the government and express our frustration with the delay, whereby I did write the following day to Greg Clark, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, here we have it. Thank you. Well, that's good. The Conservative group have always supported the reopening of Manston Airport, and now, as the leader of Thanet Council, I'm proud of the fact that private investors have the confidence and belief to invest in our district. I'm sure we are the envy of other councils that 400 million of private investment, or if you like, levelling up funds, are winging their way towards us. In addition to the creation of jobs, it will also give local people access to training and reskilling, allowing wider opportunities of employment. Something not often spoken about is the business rate income stream to TDC, which it will come from the reopening of the airport and associated businesses. I believe that the reopening of Manston Airport is something that most residents of Thanet want to see. I suppose we'll only get to know that on the 5th of May 2023. The completion of the sale of the Granville Theatre in Ramsgate is nearly complete, and as we now know, the new owner has been selected, with the final legal process well underway to take the sale through to completion. The prospective buyer was selected following a robust evaluation process is Westwood One Limited, a local-run organisation, family-run organisation. Their proposal will see the theatre refurbished to provide a high-quality production, dance and cinema space. Management of the Winter Gardens has now been returned to the council. Temporary security screening has been installed and fencing put in place to protect and preserve the building, with security measures including daily patrols, internal inspections and CCTV. Contrary to claims from certain quarters, this is now our opportunity to take a good look with fresh eyes at the Winter Gardens and find the ideal solution to determine a clear and long-term future for the venue. It was agreed at Cabinet on the 22nd of September for the first phase of studies to go ahead, which will include a costed structural survey, a complete set of site drawings, and encouraging a team of consultants to conduct a review of the Margate nighttime economy. This will support the council to go out to the marketplace to understand the interests for a leisure provision. Project discussions between Thanet Rotary Club and TDC, alongside a donation from Southern Water, good old Southern Water, have enabled 12 new recycling stations to be installed across our main bathing beaches this summer. The first emptying of the bins produced 3 tonnes of recycling, all of which have been kept away from landfills or at sea. Thanks go to Officer Mark Greening for the sourcing and installation of the bins. The multi-agency litter pick took place at Margate Sands a few days back when I joined, it was a few days, it was more than that now, so sorry, I should have corrected that bit, which joined to litter pick and engage with beach visitors along with the council's community team, Margate Task Force, Kent Fire Rescue Service, local litter picking group, Rise Up, Clean Up and volunteers. Between us, we collected 34 bags of rubbish and 10 bags of recycling in just 1 hour. I did actually catch a shark, but that's a story for another day. Staying on the same subject of the environment, our open spaces team have been undertaking biodiversity work at Ramsgate Cemetery. They have installed bird boxes, created habitats by planting trees and reusing natural materials such as logs and tree stumps. Wildflowers have been planted to attract pollinators, and woodland walk has been installed for visitors. I did actually volunteer to water the young trees at Jackie Baker's during the August heatwave, so the tree officer could take a well-earned holiday. The trees were planted in March and as part of the Queen's Canopy project, and my thanks go to my co-pilots, Councillor George Cutt and Charlie Dench, for riding shotgun, and to the Open Spaces team for entrusting their truck and Bowser tank to me, which I did return unscathed. Ellington Park in Ramsgate was awarded the Green Flag Award, a first for parks in Thanet. This follows its restoration in 2021 through a partnership agreement between the Friends of Ellington Park and Thanet District Council, which with funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Finishing off on this subject, the draft net zero strategy and action plan has been produced, which outlines how we achieve a reduction in the council's core carbon footprint to net zero by 2030. It is an excellent report and puts our council up there leading the way. Recognition should go to Dr Hannah Scott for her hard work putting this together, and portfolio holder Councillor Bob Bayford for his input and steering it through the process. I also attended the ceremony whereby the Margate Charter Trustees conferred Tracy Emin to the title of Honorary Freewoman of Margate. This was awarded as recognition of the valuable contribution that Tracy has made to the town. By living and working here, Tracy has certainly increased Margate's profile and the regeneration of the town. Tracy Emin's name will be added to the Margate Charter Trustee Honours Board. It marks the first time that the title of Honorary Freewoman has been bestowed in the 50-year history of the Margate Charter Trustees, and it will be listed alongside the likes of Winston Churchill, who became a freeman of Margate in 1957. We have been awarded £3.8 million of funding by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities through the Rough Sleeping Initiative. This 3-year funding means that we can plan further ahead and allow for earlier intervention to help prevent vulnerable people from becoming rough sleepers and to support current rough sleepers into accommodation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. I call upon Councillor Everett to comment on or ask questions in relation to the Leader's report.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank the Leader for the advanced copies of her report. I recognise that there have always been and continue to be strong and sincere views about Manston on both sides of the argument. Council knows where this Labour group stands. But we all agree that this issue has been a blight on Thanet for far too long. I have a new measurement for delay, and it's called the Tory Prime Minister. It was 3 Prime Ministers ago, under David Cameron, when the airport shut, and River Oak first said it would submit a DCO. It was 2 leaders ago, when Theresa May was Prime Minister, that we had the DCO examination stage. And it was 1 leader ago, under Boris Johnson, when the DCO was granted in July 2020, quashed in early 2021, and now granted again 18 months later. I very much doubt that the airport will be opening under Liz Truss, and you can interpret that whichever way you like. Of course, jobs and investment are vital for Thanet, which is why the Labour administration prioritised Ramsgate Port for the levelling up bid and lobbied hard for Parkway Station. It's a shame that Councillor Ashby didn't also mention in her report the very real concerns that many people in Ramsgate have regarding Manston about their quality of life, about environmental damage, about the tourist industry and about residents' right to sleep. And since she mentioned investment zones in relation to the business rates, or she mentioned business rates in relation to Manston Airport, should that become an investment zone, of course we wouldn't get the business rates in all probability. But we don't know that because the government hasn't told us what it means. She didn't mention that even more agricultural land will have to be allocated for new housing which could be built on the airport because there simply aren't enough brownfield sites elsewhere in Thanet to accommodate it. In fact, there's a real risk the council has to allocate more rural sites and then the airport still doesn't go ahead. There will be no going back on those allocations, just as there is no going back on the current plan as a matter of law, not as a policy to be decided by this council now or in the future. The Leader seems to think that next May's local elections will be a public verdict on the airport. I admire her optimism. Funnily enough, we had an election earlier this year in Nethercourt, which Councillor Piper tried to turn into a referendum on the airport, and I'm very grateful to him for that. I suspect most voters next May will be more worried about feeding their families, about the cost of heating their homes, and indeed whether they will still have one. I want to welcome the successful bid for the Granville Theatre and wish the new owners every success. I also want to praise the work done by the Eastcliff Ward councillors, especially Councillor Crittenden, who, unlike others, did not align themselves to one particularly vocal bidder, but sought to understand and clarify the process being followed and raise concerns they had with Cabinet and officers. I don't think the Council's handling of this matter is beyond criticism, but it is clear that opposition councillors were in no position to assess the merits of one publicised proposal against others because of the proper need for confidentiality. I was intrigued to be told that it had been revealed on Facebook that my sister had put in a bid. Not so much because she hadn't told me, but because I didn't know I had a sister. I've had a stern word with my mother, but it turns out she didn't know either. However, it's understandable when residents see a positive plan for the building that is widely promoted, they smell something wrong when they're told its proponents couldn't get a proper hearing, and I don't blame the public for that. We look forward to seeing the Granville brought back into use by the community very soon, and the same goes for the ongoing work around the Winter Gardens. I want to welcome the Net Zero Strategy and Action Plan, which follows on from Labour's climate emergency motion, the work of the Cabinet Advisory Group, and the employment of our first climate change officer. This plan is a big step forward, and I commend all those who have contributed to it, including the Cabinet member. But if fracking, drilling in the North Sea and scrapping environmental laws are all part of the latest Conservative government's policy, I do wonder how our own leader will be able to reconcile the local and national agenda. Finally, the leader tells us about the 3.8 million three-year funding for the Rough Sleeping Initiative, and it's good to be able to plan. What she doesn't say is that the council was allocated 1.8 million for the single year 2021-22, and that the problem is increasing fast. So what we've actually been given is a big cash reduction, even without taking rising need or inflation into account. Once again, it is the weaker members of society who suffer because of a Conservative decision. That is the context of their efforts to cut taxes for the better off, and while I can't blame Councillor Ashby for it, I will say that it stinks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Everett. I think we enjoyed some of that. It's quite well put together. Councillor Ashby, would you like to respond?
Not sure I can follow that, Chair. Well, what I meant by the airport about the 5th of May next year wasn't necessarily a positive or a negative, so we'll have to see. Unfortunately, we're probably all beholden to what happens in central government as opposed to actually whether there are more residents that want the airport or don't want it. I agree with you as well, the Granville, it is an absolute fantastic result for the district, and it was obviously enabled us to see the actual process and how things should be processed, and the fact that it was all decided by an independent panel as well actually made it all the more, if you like, process pure.
And we followed the process.
And we did follow the process. Other part about the fracking, and I can't be held to account for that, so I don't really know. I don't really have a stance on that. All I know is that we should never have become beholden to Russia, and if we hadn't have done, then we probably wouldn't be where we are now. But we are where we are now, and quite frankly, I'm very, very concerned about the situation out there. So we can sort out our own issues locally, and I like to concentrate on issues locally, but it does pale into somewhat insignificance when you see the plight of what is going on out there. So I just hope that we can find a sensible solution, and we can get back to dealing with business for our own council in a way that makes sense. Thank you for your response, Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Garner, have you got something lively for us as well?
I'm not sure I can be quite that lively, but I'll see what I can do. I'd like Councillor Everett, like to start as usual by thanking the Leader for early sight of her report to allow us to prepare our responses, although, as she said, standing up to deliver these responses has been sadly delayed by the death of the late Queen. You won't be surprised to hear that, though not entirely surprised, we were deeply disappointed that the Secretary of State saw fit to approve a new air cargo hub at Manston. At a time in our rapidly worsening climate emergency that's never been so obvious to all of us, from heat wave and drought even in the temperate UK to disastrous floods in Pakistan. This government decision was taken despite evidence from their own experts that there is no need for a cargo hub and that it will blight the beautiful town of Ramsgate, for which, as a council, we've developed such exciting plans through the Ramsgate Future programme. There's been much mystery about the source of the 500 million, or is it now 600 million, investment needed to fund this misadventure, and we suspect it's as likely to appear as River Oak's prediction of thousands of new local jobs, a prediction at odds with the 200 posts currently involved in running Southend Airport, a number which sadly looks set to be reduced now that Amazon are pulling out, citing concerns about the climate impact of aviation. We certainly recognise that more high-quality jobs and training opportunities are needed in Thanet, which is why we are delighted that the development of a green hub at Ramsgate Port forms part of our Levelling Up programme, giving up access to sustainable jobs for the future rather than harking back to the past. We are pleased to see the long-running saga of the Granville Theatre is at an end at last, and we wish the new owner, Westwood One Limited, luck with their plans. The Leader is aware, though, that we do have concerns about the process that was followed here, This has been a chapter of accidents and miscommunications culminating in unsuccessful bidders who had committed considerable time to work out their bids, receiving the news that they were not successful in a 4-line text. This is not the way community groups with exciting ideas for the future of a council asset should be treated, even if we have chosen an alternative project at this point. Overall, we think there is a need for much greater clarity and transparency over our asset transfer and disposal process, as evidenced by the difficulties some colleagues have had getting any information at all on what's happening with places like the Spencer Square Cafe and tennis courts. We hope the Winter Gardens will serve as an opportunity for us to do better with our processes and communications with interested parties and the public, so we can develop a process we and residents all understand and feel happy with. We're delighted to see the publication of our ambitious and comprehensive net zero strategy, and wish to congratulate Dr. Anna Scott, Councillor Bob Bayford and everyone else involved in developing this. As ever, the acid test will be how we deliver it and whether we can get partners on board. We would urge Cabinet and senior officers to ensure we cooperate as fully as possible with other agencies and learn from other councils as this field develops. And you won't be surprised to hear us suggest that the increasing number of green-led councils across the country, from Lewis to Lancaster, are definitely worth following for examples of good practice. It was great also to hear positive news on recycling and tree planting, and we'd like to thank all the officers and members involved and the Rotary for their recycling initiative. To pursue both this effective community engagement and help us move toward net zero, we would urge Cabinet and senior officers to identify places where more community tree planting initiatives can take place, so that local groups who want to lead on these schemes can fulfil their ambitions and help improve our low levels of tree cover across the district. And finally, as we move into what is likely to be a very challenging autumn and winter for many of our residents, we welcome the funding for the rough sleeping initiative, even though, as highlighted earlier by Councillor Everett, we do need to recognise that year on year it is a reduction on the amount we've received for this year. Providing support like this for the most vulnerable in our communities is going to become a higher priority, and we as a council will need to be thinking more creatively about ways in which we can provide that essential support. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cardner. Leader, do you have a response?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your comments, Councillor Garner. I have to say that the process of asset disposals is complicated, and it is also highly confidential because of the nature. You can't release information with bidders, etc., because that is detrimental to them and their own data protection and privacy. So as soon as it was known that where the award was going and when it was safe to do so, then that's when the news came out. Unfortunately, I can't agree with you on the process. I think the process was followed very well. Unfortunately, being in business and of having been an actual fact in any of us that have applied for jobs where we've just had a one-line text to tell us that we've been unsuccessful, unfortunately, that is the way of life. And other than just notifying unsuccessful bidders, that is very common practice in the private sector as well as it is in the public sector. In fact, I think the public sector probably say a lot more than the private sector do. It's good to hear about the support for all the green initiatives. Obviously, you're going to come from that direction. The only thing that I struggle with is that we need houses to home people, but we need to plant trees, and the two sort of don't really marry from that point. And we are very short of land.
Yes, they do.
We are very short of land, if you allow me to finish, and we know that the priority in order to move people from the rough sleeping onto initiatives of finding them work and finding them places to live is a perpetual problem of actually providing housing. As Councillor Whitehead has often said, that we need to provide more housing, more affordable housing. So we have to find the balance within the district. But I thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. I call upon Councillor Reverend Stuart Piper to comment on or ask questions in relation to the Leader's report. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader, for your report. Some very interesting points that have already been, I think, very well covered by my colleagues. I would just like to add that I think our local councils, all of them, treated the notices of the Queen's death and the proclamation of the accession of King Charles III with dignity and grace, and served our community very proud. Moving on to some of the other substantive remarks in your report, I agree with you. I believe the reopening of Manston Airport is something that most residents in Thanet want to see. Thanet independence, it may be worth my while taking the opportunity to remind everybody, we owe our existence because of our promise made as UKIP candidates on Manston Airport, and when the time came for us to take decisive action to ensure that they had a final chance to achieve that, we took the action we needed to, and now we are where we are, and we look forward to hearing lots of lovely aircraft and other business activity going on that site soon. I would add that I do in fact live under the flight path. Oh, and not to mention the jobs. I do believe the 200 jobs at the airport that was mentioned are those who work directly on site. There are thousands of other ancillary jobs associated with the airport. With regard to the Winter Gardens, it is very sad, of course, the state that it's in at the moment, but I respect that the Council is doing its level best to try and improve the situation. For myself, on behalf of the Thanet Independents, I wrote to Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber and asked if he would have any interest in not only meeting with you, Leader, but providing some funding for developing that site. His office did reply that he is having completed the alterations at Drury Lane. He's involved in another one at the moment and didn't feel able to commit resources at this time, but he thanked us for our support for that iconic building. In the meanwhile, we've had some cross-party financial support from Councillor George Rozecki, Councillor Linda Piper and myself, who have given a donation of £6,000 to St Mark's Church in Ramsgate. It may interest members to know that the size of the stage in St Mark's Church matches that of the Winter Gardens. And so the donation was given to them to enable them to carry out lighting and sound improvements and be able, perhaps a little quicker than the Granville Theatre, to be able to offer an alternative space for local people, for dance groups, drama groups and so on. But I wonder, Leader, would you be prepared to invite Mr Kevin Spain from the church to share a coffee and a chat with us to fully explain what the church is trying to do in order to help the community? It has now designated the stage as a community project. So I wonder if you'd be kind enough to invite him. It has 200 seats as well. So it's a sizable venue that we should make good use of while we have the need. It's good to see that the trees that have been planted in the last year, particularly those under the canopy, many of them are surviving. It's sad to see when the local Herberts decide to break them, but it's good to see that many of them are surviving, and we are hoping to, although we haven't got the location exactly yet, Ramsgate Town Council is hoping indeed to plant a good deal more trees within the locality. Thank you very much for your report and for listening to me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Piper. Leader, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, just thank you for your positive comments on the issues. Also, yes, I'd be delighted if you would like to forward the details, then I'll make arrangements. It would be good to have, whilst we're sorting out the provision for the Winter Gardens, it would be good to have an alternative provision to get us through the time when, whilst the temporary closure of the Winter Gardens is there. Thank you, Councillor Pye.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. Now, Councillor Piper, I'm going to be calling right back on you for agenda item 10, the report from the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. Councillor Piper.
Thank you again, Chair. Members, I commend the report to you. We've had some time to read it and consider it. It is essentially the same as the meeting we had to curtail. If there are any questions that you would like to ask, please do so. Or if there's more detail you want, I happily invite anyone to write to me on any particular subject. But I commend it to you. And one of our options is to note the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Piper. And we, as members, will note the report, I'm sure. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 11, changes to committees. The Leader of the Council has informed Democratic Services that she wishes to replace Councillor George Cupp with Councillor Linda Wright as a member of the Governance and Audit Committee. Group leaders may take this opportunity as well to advise of any other changes to their nominations to committees, panels and boards for the remainder of the 2022-2023 year. Councillor Ashby, do you wish to advise any further nomination changes?
Nothing further, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Everett, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Garner, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Piper, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That concludes the business for this first meeting of the Council this evening.